Hello, everybody. So today I want to talk about traders. I want to talk about folks who appear to be in a hurry with MicroStrategy stock. Just to show you, some of the comments I get. Someone said that MicroStrategy peaked at 530 when Bitcoin was 99. Now Bitcoin is 106, 107, and it's at 408. It's a garbage stock because 4 weeks, it's underperformed. It's a garbage stock. That's what one says. Another one says, stop with the greedy ATMs. Ease up, Saylor. And I think this is not really realizing that the greedy ATM grabbing new Bitcoin via issuance of newly minted shares, those grabs benefit one person and one person only. That's the common stock holder. If you listen once again to the 2-hour conference call of Q3, Saylor told you he's working for the long-term common stock holder. And when you talk about price action, when you talk about trading, that tells me you're in a hurry. And being in a hurry is not understanding Bitcoin. And it's certainly, in my view, that's just my view here. This is just my channel, but I don't think it's understanding stocks either. If you look at the best investors in stocks, they're always very long-term investors. And if you look at the best investors in Bitcoin, they are all long-term investors. As Saylor says, if you're not going to hold it for 5 years, speaking of Bitcoin, if you're not going to hold Bitcoin for 5 years, you should not own it for a second if you don't own it for 5 years. And I really take this to heart. This is why I was looking at my cost basis. My cost basis on MicroStrategy is ridiculous. It's something just under 30 is my cost basis total because I did it up. I bought it up. Anyways, this is not about me. This is about this channel. This is about the fact that you gotta be willing to hold a stock for 2 years and it has to do nothing for 2 years and you have to feel no emotion. That's how stocks work. I could talk to you about Tesla, I could talk to you about HIMS. Stocks go through valleys of despair that are 2 years, 3 years until they pop. If you're judging company performance on 4 weeks, you're just not doing yourself any favors. This is no financial advice. This is just what I do. Yes, there is short-term underperformance. If you look at the short-term underperformance, the ETF is up 18% and MicroStrategy itself is up 15%. So yes, you're missing out on 3%, but that's just the short term. People should look at the long term. When you zoom out to the start of the ETF, so almost a year, when you zoom out to almost a year, MicroStrategy's performance was 661% in, let's call it 11 months. IBIT was 126%. So MicroStrategy has way more than outperformed Bitcoin. It's not even funny over a 1-year period. Zooming out is important. And I also want to say, I don't have anything against people in a hurry. I don't have anything against traders, but there's instruments for that. And many of you in the comments section tell me, I'm in the leverage, MSTU, MSTX, whatever. Here's another leverage play that I see a lot on Twitter, that a lot of people are into. It's B2. B2 is the Ultra Bitcoin ETF, 2x the exposure. But guess what? This is a daily instrument. You should not own it more than 1 day because of the decay. And if the decay, I'm the first to admit that the decay, for example, that doesn't matter too much on the TQQQ, because the TQQQ compared to, say, Bitcoin, or the QQQ itself compared to Bitcoin, well, that daily volatility is not very high. Daily volatility on something like Bitcoin is entirely going to kill your return, kill your investment. So when they mean daily on something like a B2, they really mean daily. And MicroStrategy is not designed like that. MicroStrategy is designed to be a very long-term hold. And as Saylor has told us, he's working for the long-term holder. If you don't want to own MicroStrategy for more than 5 years, you should not own it at all. No financial advice. Moving on. Saylor is tapping the at-the-market offering. At spikes, whenever it looks like the stock is going to peak I heard some people yell at me in the comment section yesterday saying, oh, well, Bitcoin is at 107, Bitcoin is spiking. MicroStrategy ended up the day flat to down, slightly down. Why did MicroStrategy end up the day flat? Because when the stock was peaking, who was minting new shares, you think? Saylor was minting new shares when the stock is peaking. Whenever it's looking like the price to NAV is going up because of a new bid, and especially as the QQQ is coming because of the new buys from the QQQ, but the new buys from money managers. I mean, let's not kid each other. This is a big stock now. MicroStrategy is a big stock now. Most of those buys are from institutions nowadays. And what is he doing? He's tapping the ATM when those flows come in. He's got a Bloomberg terminal. He sees it coming and he taps the ATM. And he taps the ATM. And when he taps the ATM, the stock goes down slightly, or at least doesn't go up as much as Bitcoin. And then he's done. And when he's done, he announces he bought. And the stock is allowed to move back up, or he goes right back into the ATM. We really don't know how long these ATMs last. Perhaps he does the ATM on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday. He's done on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The stock can go back up, and maybe Monday morning the stock goes back up, and Monday afternoon he goes at it again, tapping the ATM again because he finds the price to NAV too high. He's taking advantage of that volatility to issue new shares to buy Bitcoin. And the goal of this video, in my view, is to demonstrate that really, if you're a long-term holder, that volatility, that short-term volatility shouldn't bother you too much. So let's assume a few things. So let's assume you had invested in MicroStrategy right before Q3, not after the call, but right before. Q3 in the morning, you buy MicroStrategy stock on October 30th, 2024, in the morning, you buy it in the morning. What do you pay? Your price to NAV, you pay a 2.7x. That's what you pay. You pay a 2.7x. So let's continue this. You pay a 2.7x, 2.747x, the current price of Bitcoin. So what happens is that if you were to spend the fiat price of Bitcoin on that day, you would have gotten 0.36 NAV value of Bitcoin via MicroStrategy. So what did that look like? Let's say it's October 30th, and you spent $66,000 on MicroStrategy stock. Back then, on October 30th, $66,000 would have gotten you one full Bitcoin on Coinbase. But you didn't decide to go for Coinbase. You decided to spend $66,000 on MicroStrategy instead. And so that got you 0.36 Bitcoin in the form of MicroStrategy, wrapped within MicroStrategy. And before I go any further, and I hear people complain that the NAV, the price to NAV dropped, I just want to point this out. If you care more about the stock price of a MicroStrategy, keep in mind you're up on that trade. If you did that trade, you're up 65%. You're up on that trade. So that's just what I want to put that aside. So let's say October 30th, you spend $66,000 and you get $66,000 worth of MicroStrategy share, which is equivalent to exposure to 0.36 Bitcoin. So you took on the premium. You decided to go the route of paying the premium instead of owning the Bitcoin on your own and just paying one Bitcoin, spending $66,000 to get one Bitcoin on Coinbase. You didn't go for Coinbase. You went for your broker and you went for MicroStrategy. So let's go on and look at this calculation. So the investor paid up 2.7 times X the price of BTC to get exposure to MicroStrategy's Bitcoin NAV instead of going to the exchange and buying 1x Bitcoin at the exchange. So now you own 0.36 BTC via MicroStrategy. What has happened since you've acquired $66,000, you've paid for 0.36 BTC instead of getting 1 BTC. What has happened since? Well, Saylor has generated a yield for you. He monetized the premium via the ATM mostly. This is mostly an ATM play. Let's not talk about the debt just yet. It's mostly an ATM play. There was only one convertible bond offering, a $3 billion one, all of the rest was ATM. He monetized that premium for you, and he did a quarter-to-date QTD, quarter-to-date Bitcoin yield of 46.4%. And you can look at the announcement from yesterday, 46.4% quarter-to-date yield. So let's go on. So what happened to your 0.36 Bitcoin, which you paid $66,000 for? So you gave up on one full Bitcoin and you got 0.36 Bitcoin instead, wrapped into MicroStrategy. What is it worth now? Now it's 0.52. Why is it 0.52? Because your 0.36 Bitcoin grew by 46%. It grew to 0.52 Bitcoin. His dilutions, and there's been many, you can count them, his dilutions are actually accretive to the guy or the girl who decides to pay 2.7x times price to NAV. It's an accretive dilution. And you may say, well, wait a minute, I'm still losing. I had 33% of Bitcoin, now I have 52% of the Bitcoin. And this is the key of MicroStrategy. How long do you think he's going to be able to keep that yield going? If he keeps that yield going for 2 to 3 quarters at this level, you're breaking even already. And then you own the stock for the foreseeable future. What if he earns a yield of 10% each year for the foreseeable future? What is the present value of that? So the wrapped Bitcoin within MicroStrategy stock, within MicroStrategy stock went from 0.36x when you bought it back on earnings day on Q3. It went from 0.36x to 0.52. 0.52 price to NAV, and that number is going to keep going. And the key to breaking even on this investment, at least the way I think about it, is as soon as it reaches a 1, so give it another 2 to 3 quarters of earnings yield, of Bitcoin yield, sorry, not earnings yield, of Bitcoin yield, give it another 2 to 3 quarters of Bitcoin yield, and we're going to get back to a 1. And so if you assume that MicroStrategy will not be trading under 1x NAV, then you're in the clear. And I don't think we'll see it before 1x, below 1x NAV, unless we have like an absolutely nasty, awful Bitcoin bear market. Otherwise, I don't think we will. I don't think it will be trading below liquidation price of Bitcoin. I just don't, unless we get such a nasty bear market. But I don't see that happening. Many argue, if you follow Twitter, if you follow the spaces, if you follow people who are big on the stock, many argue it's 1.5x is the lowest we'll ever see again. So I have no idea how low the price to NAV could go. But what I know is that if the yield keeps happening, in my view, long-term holders should be rewarded, because the 1x price to NAV is the floor. Right? Buying a Bitcoin via MicroStrategy, I don't think is going to be cheaper than buying a Bitcoin via Coinbase. And this is the essence of this spreadsheet that I showed the last time. If you think that MicroStrategy stock, if you think that MicroStrategy stock is going to be earning a Bitcoin yield of 15% a year, 15% a year. So you buy it today with the price to NAV premium of today, which has dropped, by the way, compared to Q3. If you buy it today, you get 0.49 Bitcoin. You wait 1 year, 0.56. You wait 1 year, you wait another year, 0.65. You wait 3 years, 0.75. You wait 4 years, 0.86. You wait 5 years, 0.99. That's assuming a 15% yield year after year after year after year. Remember, quarter to date yield was 46%. Even in my optimistic scenario, I'm not even assuming he's earning 46% a quarter. I'm assuming 25% a quarter. And in that case, if you assume 25% a quarter, you get a break even on the Bitcoin, i.e. a portion of a Bitcoin becomes one full Bitcoin right around year 3, and then beats it year 4, year 5, and so on. What if he's able to keep up 40% a quarter for 4 quarters? I mean, in that case, the price to NAV would be way too low. And that's just the way I think. And by the way, Saylor, he said in the call that 8 to 12% roughly yearly Bitcoin yield is that's what he was expecting. That's what he was expecting. And I think he's very surprised. I think he's very surprised that the ATM just keeps working, and he keeps tapping it, and it keeps working. and it keeps accelerating and walking. I think Saylor is just as surprised as a lot of us. And he guided 8 to 12%. Well, it seems to me like it's going to be gone out of the window, at least for this year and probably for next year. I don't know when he will get to 6 to 8 to 12%. He also guided, by the way, that we would have a 21 billion at the market offering that would last 3 years, and he's almost done with it. If he keeps going at this pace, he's going to be done with the ATM within 5 weeks. So I think Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, I think they got pleasantly surprised by how well received this strategy has been in the market. And so the key question, number one, is will he be able to keep up the yield? And you know, I still think if it's a 15% yield, you know, I like the stock. I like the stock a lot if it's a 15% yield for the next 10 years. Point number one. Point number two, many traders are all about the price to NAV increasing, and they say, oh, what if the price to NAV increases? What if it exceeds 2.7 again, a 2.7x? Remember, it went past a 3x at the peak of mid-November. Mid-November, we peaked past the 3x. We were almost at 3.5x. Some people think it should be trading at a much higher NAV, price to NAV, and they're betting that it will reach, say, a 5x price to NAV or an 8x price to NAV. I have no idea whether it's going to do that or not. But I just said that if the price to NAV remains a 1 to 1.5, even then, to me, no financial advice, but to me, this looks like a good deal, even if it stays at an NAV of a 1.5x. But of course, you have multiple expansion investors, and this is true of any stock. You always have a part of the investors who get into the stock because they want to bet on the multiple expansion. In my view, it's not necessary to own this stock, but if you do, that's just the icing on the cake. The only problem is if it gets to an 8x NAV or a 7x NAV or a 5x NAV, then the stock is going to start to look expensive, right? Look at Palantir, for example. That's an example of that. The stock is going to start to look expensive. Right now, at a 2-ish x NAV, I don't find the stock expensive because you can make that up in 4 years to 3 years, depending on what yield you assume for the next 3 to 4 years. So that's point number two. Point number three is one thing that we don't place enough credence on. But MicroStrategy is not an ETF. MicroStrategy is a stock. It's a stock with a story, with a leader and a story. And if you know Elon Musk, any stock, any company associated with Elon Musk has a premium valuation. People want to bet on the jockey. They don't always want to bet on the horse. They often want to bet on the jockey. And Elon Musk is considered a top jockey, and therefore, people, when Musk bought X, it was a no-brainer to a lot of people. He had financing, no issues. Same for Jensen Huang and NVIDIA, right? He's considered a top jockey. Michael Saylor could likely be considered the top jockey in the field of Bitcoin and in the field of modern-day digital finance. So what's the value of the face of Michael Saylor? What's the value of the notoriety of Michael Saylor? He is, in my view, the most visible face of Bitcoin out there. He's more visible than Max Keiser at this point. I mean, he's on CNBC, he's on the mainstream news, he's on every single podcast, he's everywhere. He's the main face of Bitcoin to traditional finance. What's the premium on that? Well, maybe not as high as a Musk premium. But in my view, there's a little bit of a premium that's higher than the premium that, say, could be experienced by, say, a Bitcoin miner whose CEOs are not as well known and don't have that story attached to them. And the last thing I'll conclude is you also have the story of past performance. Stocks that have performed really well in the past tend to trade higher because people think of them highly. And if you look at the past performance, we're about to close the year. MicroStrategy will be discussed, will be highlighted as the best performing stock for this year. And if they keep going for the last 2 years and for the last 5 years, if they keep going. And so what does that mean? That means that creates more aura around the stock and that creates an over premium around the stock. So I have no idea where it's headed. I know that I'm very comfortable having near 40% of my portfolio in MicroStrategy stock, and I put my money where my mouth is, and I put my airtime on this channel on my biggest investment, which now makes sense, which is MicroStrategy. And so still love HIMS, still love Tesla, still love plenty of other stocks on this channel, but this one has really turned out to be a top strategy for me, and it's one that I think is poised to beat the denominator, which is the goal of this channel. Beat the denominator, beat the growth in the money stock, beat the perpetual increase in how much money we have in the system. Look at it tomorrow, Wednesday. It looks like they're going to cut the rates again. Explain this to me. QE to infinity on steroid is what's about to happen. So anyways, no financial advice, no investment advice. This was just entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on X, follow me on Patreon. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.